Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
I was born Robert Philip Hanssen on April 18, 1944, right in the city of Chicago, Illinois. Long before the headlines and the code names, I was just a boy growing up in the Midwest with a completely ordinary name.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
I grew up in the Norwood Park neighborhood of Chicago. On the outside, it was a standard post-war middle-class upbringing, but inside our home, the environment was incredibly tense. My mother, Vivian, was a housewife, and my father, Howard, was a Chicago police officer. He was a deeply critical and demanding man who constantly belittled and disparaged me throughout my childhood. That harsh family structure and the emotional friction from my father really shaped a lot of the isolation I felt early on.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I was a relatively quiet, introverted kid who found escape in books. I graduated from William Howard Taft High School in 1962, and then I went on to Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, where I earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1966. I actually took Russian as an elective there, which is an interesting detail given where my life went. After that, I spent a couple of years at Northwestern University Dental School before realizing dentistry wasn't for me. I switched tracks completely and earned a Master of Business Administration in Accounting and Information Systems from Northwestern in 1971. So altogether, I had about 8 years of higher education after high school.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
For me, it was the decision to join law enforcement and combine it with my background in numbers. I joined the Chicago Police Department in 1972, working in an internal affairs unit to investigate corrupt officers. And then I applied to the FBI, officially joining the Bureau as a special agent in January 1976. At the time, it felt like the natural progression of a straight-laced career in public service. But putting on that badge gave me the exact institutional access and the specific security clearances that would eventually lead to my darkest choices.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement? And what were the consequences?
My very first official interaction with the criminal justice system as a suspect didn't happen until the very end, on February 18th, 2001. I didn't have a juvenile record or early adult arrests. Instead, I spent decades working inside the law as a Chicago police officer and an FBI agent. The devastating consequence of that first and final arrest was that I was caught in the act of espionage, entirely unraveling my double life in an instant.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It was right after my arrest in February 2001, when the media circus erupted nationally. The Department of Justice publicly labeled my actions as possibly the worst intelligence disaster in U.S. history. Seeing the sheer scale of the federal investigation, the hundreds of agents involved, and realizing that the government was uncovering the full timeline of secrets I had passed since the late 1970s, made it clear that my name was permanently cemented in the annals of espionage history.
Did fame make you more dangerous? Or did it simply expose who you already were?
I never had fame while I was operating. I had absolute anonymity. My danger came from the fact that I was completely invisible. I used the alias Ramon Garcia and other covers, meaning my handlers didn't even know my true identity. The notoriety only came after I was caught, and it didn't change my actions. It simply pulled back the curtain on a hidden, parallel existence that I had meticulously maintained for over 20 years.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
Ultimately, it was a mix of my own technical mistakes and an outside source that brought me down. For years, I trusted my own tradecraft and instincts to keep me safe. But the FBI eventually obtained original Russian intelligence files and a recording of an anonymous American spy's voice, which they were able to match directly to me. My reliance on the belief that I was too clever to be caught was my true internal betrayal.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People might be surprised by just how deeply I immersed myself in espionage fiction long before I ever became a spy. As a young man, I completely devoured James Bond books and movies. I went so far as to buy a Walther PPK pistol, a Leica spy camera, and a shortwave radio just to flesh out that childhood fantasy. It's bizarre to think that the mundane props of a fictional movie character were things I actively collected in real life.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
The public saw a monster or a clinical traitor, but they didn't see the crushing financial and social pressures of the domestic life I had built. I had married into a wealthy family, converted to Catholicism, and joined the deeply conservative organization Opus Dei. My wife, Bonnie, and I had 6 children. We committed to sending all of them to expensive private schools and tithing heavily to the church. On an FBI agent's salary, I couldn't afford the lifestyle I felt obligated to provide, and the pressure of maintaining that strict, righteous exterior while drowning financially was immense.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My rivalries weren't personal feuds with individual lawmen. They were institutional. My entire career became a quiet, adversarial game against the FBI's own counterintelligence and internal security programs. I was constantly navigating their security systems, exploitation techniques, and mole hunts, testing my ability to bypass their defenses without triggering alarms.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
Privately, I was fighting a massive psychological duplication. Outwardly, I was a deeply religious family man, a strict counterintelligence official, and a mentor to younger agents. Privately, I was managing secret communications, handling large sums of cash and diamonds from Moscow, and dealing with the constant low-level anxiety of living a lie that would completely destroy my family if discovered.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
The FBI had placed me under tight surveillance, and even moved me to a specific office at headquarters equipped with hidden cameras and microphones. On February 18, 2001, they tracked me to Foxstone Park in Vienna, Virginia. I walked down a wooded path to a footbridge to leave highly classified materials wrapped in a plastic bag for a dead drop. As I walked back to my car, an FBI arrest team rushed me and took me into custody. To avoid the death penalty, I struck a plea bargain and pled guilty to 15 counts of espionage. In May 2002, I was sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that I was driven by a deep ideological loyalty to the Soviet Union or communism. I didn't care about their politics or their system. My motivations were far more transactional and rooted in finance and ego. I wanted the money to support my family's lifestyle, and I wanted the thrill of knowing I could successfully play the system.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
People would be surprised by how utterly mundane and domestic my daily routine was outside of work. I was a man who helped my 6 kids with homework, attended mass regularly, spent time on home electronics, and dealt with everyday neighborhood life in suburban Virginia. The terrifying part of my story isn't that I looked like a villain, but that I looked exactly like an ordinary, boring neighbor.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on June 5th, 2023 at the age of 79. I was found unresponsive in my cell at the ADX Florence Federal Penitentiary, the Supermax prison in Fremont County, Colorado. My death was determined to be from natural causes after I had spent more than 2 decades serving out my life sentence in isolation.
What scares you more? Getting caught, losing power, or being forgotten?
During my active years, the psychological profiles and my own behavioral patterns showed that losing control and getting caught were my greatest fears. I spent decades building an intricate wall of anonymity because the thought of exposure and the total destruction of the respected persona I presented to my family and church was completely unacceptable to me.
Calvin, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I would just say that history remembers the documents past and the damage done, but the real weight is the quiet erosion of everything else. Living two lives means you never fully exist in either one. Thank you for letting me share my side of the history.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.